I know you thought when you saw the title, The Problem of Falling Rock, that wonder what in this world she has in mind. I'm from Alabama. I'm from flatland. I'm not accustomed to mountains, and I do not love to drive in the mountains of North Carolina. Those high rocks fill me with dread. Driving along the highways that run through the mountains, you probably have noticed the frequency of signs that read, "Beware of falling rock." Now, I've seen this many times, and I've often wondered why it didn't say beware of fallen rock. For I don't know that there's much anyone can do that's in the act of falling, as rocks falling as one drives along. We've just seen what a rock slide can do on I-40, which has just recently been opened for traffic. Now, this hazard of driving along these highways that no precautions can avoid, your rate of speed has nothing to do with it, nor the way you handle your car or your tires. It makes no difference whether you're a good driver or a bad driver. The hazard is there, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's typical of those troubles in life which no caution can avoid and which have nothing to do with one's conduct, whether it be good or bad. The insurance people call this an act of God. When they come, and there's nothing you can do about it. I experienced this when Hurricane Fran came through Fayetteville. My neighbor's 90-foot pine tree came across my garage, my den, and my house was flooded. When I contacted my insurance company, I was told that the tree was in my neighbor's yard and that it was considered an act of God, and my insurance was responsible. I didn't think that was fair, but there was nothing I could do about it. That's just the way things go. Now, this is not fatalism. This is a recognition that God has set up in this world certain natural laws that govern inanimate objects. The question that I ask you to consider is, what should be our attitude toward these troubles that we can do nothing to prevent? The commonest attitude is that of worry, for that is the most common and widespread of all the transgressions that mark the inconsistency of a Christian. Years ago, there was a character in the cartoons called the Timid Soul, who was afraid of everything. I suppose that if this character were to meet one of these signs along the highway, he would probably peer anxiously over his shoulder and seeing the overhanging boulders, would turn his car around and go back. But suppose he did drive on and risk this. He might drive very carefully and worry all the time, lest one of those huge rocks would break loose and come crashing down on his car. But what good would worrying do? It wouldn't hold the rock in place. No, it wouldn't make the rock fall any faster. The worrying of the driver has little effect on the rock, but it has a tremendous effect on the driver. People have never really, truly realized what a destructive thing worry is. It truly plays havoc with one's life. It ruins digestion. It causes stomach ulcers. It interferes with sound sleep and forces us to face another day unrested and irritable. It shortens our tempers. It makes us snap at members of our family. Anxiety and tension, which are twins, bring on heart disease, high blood pressure, and nervous disorders. Ask any doctor, and they'll tell you that the patient who is apprehensive retards his own recuperation. Hard work, even overwork, has never killed anyone. It's not the amount of work that we do that harms us. It's the strain or the tension caused by our anxiety over the work that counts. We would live longer and do more and better work if we could bring ourselves to the philosophy of this old spiritual which says, when I works hard. When I sits loose. And when I worry, I go to sleep. Would that sleep would overtake us when we begin to worry. We would be healthier, we would live longer, our dispositions would be sweeter, and we would be nicer to know and to live with. Now, Jesus had a great deal to say about this. In the 6th chapter of Matthew, you find a full quotation on this theme in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said, "Take no thought of the morrow." That is, no anxious, troubled thought. Or we might well say, don't worry about tomorrow. For that is precisely the meaning of the words. Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit to his stature? You can't suddenly make yourself a foot taller. This is one of the things in life you have to accept. Fretting about your lack of inches will not increase them. If you borrow trouble from tomorrow, if you anticipate the difficulties that you see or think you see ahead, are you any better able to cope with them? Can you, by worrying, keep something unpleasant from happening? Do you soften the blow or ease the pain or lessen the burden? Of course not. But you stand a good chance of reducing your ability to take it. Now, I want to make a differentiation here between thoughtful consideration on the one hand and the useless fretting on the other that destroys peace of mind, that takes away appetite and leaves a person sleepless and miserable. It's this latter useless fretting that I have in mind. But if you are a Christian, if you are a child of God, then your worrying is not only futile, it's actually sinful. For worry to the Christian is a sin. When Christ turns the searchlight of his penetrating insight and decisive intellect upon worry, he defines it in a very simple way. He sees it as nothing more than a lack of trust in God with regard to the rocks that fall upon us, the troubles which come our way. And in this day of terrorist attack and lack of immorality, of murder, arson, crimes we never dreamed of, they're very heavy and very sinister. And the only happy way to deal with them is in faith. Faith in the purpose of God, faith in the promise of God, faith in the presence of God, and faith in the power of God to deliver us from any trouble. Only when we have faith can we be free of fear. If you are afraid, then we must suspect that you have lost your faith in God. And a great deal of strain and tension of modern life is due to our unwillingness to accept situations that are beyond our control. Christians must be realists as well as idealists, and Christ was both. There was never clearer realism than is to be found than in the teachings of Jesus. When we resist things that we cannot change, then we have an inner tension, and that's what causes the trouble. For example, and you've all experienced this, you plan a vacation, and then somebody gets sick, and you have to postpone it. And inside you're filled with pity and with resentment